Hello and welcome to Heroes of Might and Magic 2. My name is Phixfox, and this is going to be something of a VOD review follow-up for the scenario Mountain King. This is a medium-sized map. It is 5 players, and we are doing something like monkey in the middle. It's denoted as being a normal difficulty map, and it says it's windy at the top, defend, divide, and conquer. We do play on impossible difficulty, and for these 5 players, we are coming back to this. This is part 2, and so the players and their positions have already been decided. As you can see, we are going to be playing here in the blue position as the Sorceresses. We have the green Wizards, the red Warlocks, the yellow Knights, and the orange Necromancers. And as I said, we are in the very center of these 4 foes. I have to tell you, I did spend a little bit of time getting up to speed on what my particular strategy should be or could be for this scenario. Nice to see that we immediately start off with 2,000 gold as Luna the Sorceress takes off and grabs herself one of those treasure chests. There are 3 treasure chests that are not too far away from your starting area. Here on day 1, we are going to pick up the well. That's going to allow us to potentially spec into getting a new hero on day 2 to help us collect more gold, and that first level shrine plus this additional 2,000 gold from that treasure chest are massive. What that allows us to do, number 1, is that it allows us to be offensively geared with our spell casting, and that means that for sure we're not going to want to go into a knight, and that also means that we are going to want to more or less stay with either the sorceresses, or if we can get lucky, as we see Castor there, go maybe for a higher spell power type of hero. Also, please note that we have gotten ourselves our elven Rangers. Our elf archers are doing pretty fantastic for us. For 1,500 gold with no other resource cost, they're an absolute no-brainer, and they can help us take some of these fights that we otherwise might have a little bit of difficulty with. As you can tell, we have some goblins to the north there, and we also have some elves. There is that purse of gold for 500 gold. That artifact is a pretty big deal. That's going to be basically half of a gold mine, and we are loading up here with what little gold we have left. We are trying to meet up with Castor, and I think at this point I've decided that Castor is going to be my primary hero. The reason being is that he does have that little additional bit of spell power, and that with the magic arrow should be able to help him get through some of these early fights. Now, we've tried 2 strategies to this point in our previous Mountain King playthroughs. Number 1, we tried to claim all the mines that were surrounding our main castle and build up into phoenixes, and then try and go forth from that point and conquer. That was utterly ineffective. There's too many enemies, they all have plenty of resources, and we were simply outmatched before we even really had a chance. While the enemies are not allied against us, they do tend to avoid fighting each other unless they are sure that they are going to come out on top. And so simply turtling up did not work. We next tried a little bit of a rush. We more or less tried to get up to, let's call it phoenixes. We had about 7 phoenixes. We got a little bit lucky and a little bit unlucky in some ways, and we headed due west. By that point, it was 3-4 weeks into the playthrough, and the enemy warlocks, who we know are to our west, already had dragons. While we were able to take a really awesome fight and take that castle for ourselves, we did end up having to give that immediately back. There were some additional warlock forces that were creeping around, so even though we were able to muster up a pretty good force and take the castle by storm, there were some defenders that charged in days later before we were able to get a new week's worth of growth, and so that playthrough also ended. And so then this playthrough, the 3rd strategy that we are going for, and I must tell you that this took a couple of attempts to kind of get this level of luck and early game start. This strategy is to rush into the enemy castle to the west as quickly as possible. I say to myself, as we go through these lots of boars, I say to myself that if we're able to get the Warlock castle to the west, and it seems to be the most easily accessible castle due to a factor of terrain and trees and other sorts of terrain that might be in the way, then from there, even if we were to give the Sorceress Castle back at some point, we have a base of operations where we can build from power and strength. After all, we do know that the Warlocks and the Wizards, with their Titans and their Dragons, they tend to do very, very well if only they can get up to those 6th level creatures. And so, what we have already seen thus far is that our phoenixes are overmatched. Those previous playthroughs, they simply did not have enough juice to get what we needed. And so, rather than wait for the enemy to get dragons, well, how about we just take the dragons before they get big and strong? And so that is our strategy. But initially here, we have these boars who are absolutely in our way. And this is a pretty hefty amount of boars. The lowest I've ever seen in this fight is about 15 boars. This here is much closer to 27, 28 boars. And luckily we had a really good start with Castor and getting the magic arrow. We also had 3 chests. Yes, not 1, not 2, but 3 chests that started off with 2,000 gold. And so this playthrough is a bit of a unicorn, and I feel bad for showing you the unicorn. I tried 2 other attempts prior to this, and they just didn't go as well as I would have hoped. I wasn't able to get the castle to the west in the first day or 2. And usually I like to say here on Phixfox Gaming's channel that if we have a loss, that we have it on camera and we show you. At some point, I'm always happy to make the B-roll material available to you. It's always interesting, even if it's not a win, it's always interesting to see how a playthrough might fail. And as you can see here, I am indicating that, oh my goodness, Castor's picked up +1 spell power after that fight, and he is also offered the chance at Necromancy. Yes, in case you were unaware, the Warlocks are the only faction other than the Necromancers who can get Necromancy, and I am really thinking about this. Right below our little window here to the immediate south, guarding one of those mines, are a couple of peasants, and I say to myself, look, peasants can be turned into skeletons, so too can some of these Walking Dead, these archers. We can find a way to make lots of skeletons, but then the question becomes, I do believe, is a skeleton snowball going to be your primary force in the army? Ultimately, I decided to go for the advanced wisdom there. That made a lot more sense to me because of how well this playthrough was going. If I'd had the opportunity to say, well, this playthrough is not going as well as it could, this is a unique and interesting strategy, I probably would have said, let's go for it. But instead, I decided to try and play this thing just a little bit safe. We do come to this witch's hut. We already have the ballistics here for Castor. I really don't mind ballistics on Castor at this point. It's not going to help him pretty much at all in the late game when it comes down to fights with phoenixes and dragons and who knows, titans and lions and bears, oh my. But for now, that can potentially help us get through some castle walls just a little bit sooner and maybe take some of the focus fire off of our troops as we defend and defeat left, right, and center turrets. So we are heading up with Castor. Castor has the bulk of our armies. Luna currently does have the purse for the +500 gold per day. She is the one who is staying at home. She is closest to Tyro there, who we just purchased. I am trying to utilize Tyro and Luna. So right now, Tyro's going to hand over his troops to Luna. Luna with her magic arrow is going to take out those peasants, and this is going to be a pretty critical point because those peasants are guarding a sulfur mine. If we can get the early game sulfur, we start getting a preparation in place for some dragons. This shouldn't be too much of a fight. In fact, we probably could have won with simply the 4 archers, but all the same, it was worth the 2,500 gold to me at this point. A luxury afforded to us because we had such a good start with those 3 treasure chests. Quite frankly, if we had had 3 treasure chests with only 1,000 gold each in it, I think that you would have seen a very different playthrough, and I don't think that you needed all 3 of them to hit for 2k gold, but it sure does help. As you can see, I'm fighting this battle all the way through, and the reason being is that one single sprite. She is very impetuous. She wants to sprint across the map, and we cannot let her. Nice to see the 6 sulfur there for that campfire that we just picked up, and it's going to be here on day 6, Luna heading back to the castle so that way she can potentially head east through those archers and go get ourselves a sawmill. So this is going to be our ultimate army. It looks like about 8 centaurs, 2 of the gargoyles, 5 or 6 of the dwarves, a couple of the sprites, about 18 plus, and then 4 of the elves. We're even able to have Rebecca leak out to the south. This is a little bit interesting. She does not get accosted here in this playthrough, and I'm not quite sure where the Warlock forces went at this point. I'm not sure where they were hiding, but obviously if they're leaving treasure behind like treasure chests, that's a little bit of an issue. Yellow for the first time kind of pokes their head into this domain. It's going to be Ector the Knight, and he does not scare us, but we're not going to tell him that just in case he decides to go get some bigger and badder friends. Rebecca is picking up a couple levels. She might as well. We're going to find out later in this playthrough how useful this gazebo can be. It's going to give us the opportunity to pick up some things like logistics for a couple of heroes, which is going to be pretty critical. At this point here on day 7, with Castor, I make a pretty big error. So Rebecca and Castor are sitting right next to each other. Castor has some 2-speed creatures in his army. Now, on the one hand, I don't want to leave him without, so that way the enemy there who I believe is Vesper. Vesper, we don't want him to come out of the castle and attack us, but in this case we can see that he didn't attack us at all. And now I am torn between Castor going to pick up that 1000 experience prior to doing this castle assault or not, and it all comes down to movement points. If we simply got rid of those 2 speed battle dwarves and just put them on the other hero, we probably would have had much different fortunes. Oh, excuse me, it is Barak. I count out the steps and it looks like it's not going to be a thing. We are not going to be able to get the gazebo and fight this fight. I say to myself, if I give the enemy any amount of extra time to breathe and purchase more troops here on day 2, we're going to be in trouble. And so we are ultimately going to attack. And it says it's going to be a loss, but we have a grand equalizer. If you haven't noticed, we've picked up a couple of instances of spell power. We currently have, it looks like a magic arrow that's going to do 50 points of damage. Barak has 4 spell power, 2 knowledge, but not a lot of good spells. Spells are not really going to factor in for the defending forces here, whereas we're going to be able to pump out 50 points of damage again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And so you can kind of see how I don't love this playthrough, because we've talked about the luck with getting some excellent amount of gold in the treasure chests. That's number 1. And then we also got a pretty tremendous amount of luck here by picking up a magic arrow without having to invest in a mage guild early on. I think that you could see that we possibly could have done that if we had decided to head east just to break through those initial archers. I think that we could have gotten over to a sawmill much quicker, but the timing of all this, even if we are just simply 1 day too shy, is going to prevent us from dumping 50 points of damage every turn onto our enemies here. So we've already done 50 points of damage. We are about to do another 50 points of damage for a grand total of 100. It's going to be 2 griffins at this current juncture. And if you notice, our forces are pretty bleak and we are going to take some pretty big hits. And I'm trying to clean out at this point the single stacks of creatures, the low stacks of creatures, knowing that my ranged troops through the wall doing half damage are probably not going to kill 2 griffins. And so I'm anticipating taking 2 full turns, 2 full magic arrows to knock out these centaurs and these griffins. And so with all of the turret damage and extra damage from there, really, it comes down to these battle dwarves. These battle dwarves have been absolute troopers for us. We are down to 2, and if we'd had even just 1 or 2 less, then this fight would absolutely have been a loss. 1200 experience, glorious victory, and we are able to take this town. We are going to get the opportunity to pick up pathfinding. Great knowing that we are in the snow and knowing that we have desert to the top and swamp to the south. Now notice that we do have the dungeon here for an additional 500 gold per day. We do have the statue for an additional 250 gold per day. This map is going to be a map where we are going to be swimming in gold, but you're going to find out a little bit more about that later. We do pick up the crypt because I'm worried. I don't know. Is there another red warlock hero somewhere around here that might swoop in and try and cause us some harm? I'm doing some scouting with Rebecca. I want to make sure that we are not surprised by an enemy coming on through. And in fact, Castor, even though he does have some movement points left, I'm thinking, well, he does have spells. His spells are the most valuable part of his arsenal. We had better keep him in a good spot. We had better wait. And so now we are in the driver's seat. We are doing everything that we want to do. This should be very, very successful if we can only maintain what we have. In theory, if our enemies are all against each other and we are against all of them, if they fight each other at all, then it's 2 castles against 1, against 1, against 1. Otherwise, if they were to all group up against us and more or less play King of the Hill, or Mountain King of the Hill, as it were, then we would probably be in much more difficulty. But I don't think that the computer players are going to take that sort of approach. And so that gives us a little bit of room. That gives us a little bit of room to do things, for example, here with Luna, trying to get this gem mine freed up from these groups of zombies and mutant zombies. Once again, we're fighting this fight because the sprites are just so impetuous. They think, aha, you will not retaliate against me, which of course the enemies will not. But if you attack the enemy, whether they hit you back or not, they will attack you on their turn. And then you're going to have some dead sprites. Very fragile creatures, but I love them very, very much. By the way, speaking of sprites, there is an excellent French YouTuber, Zapixo. Take a look at Zapixo's stuff. He's doing some excellent things right now with Heroes of Might and Magic 1. I'm a big fan of him, and he's doing some unit tier rankings, tier by tier by tier, with Heroes of Might and Magic 1 and had a nice little discussion, little conversation about the sprites. Go check him out. I'm a big fan of the things that he's doing. And by the way, I'm a big fan of anybody in the Heroes of Might and Magic stratosphere that is doing wonderful things with this fantastic series. Speaking of which, Olden Era is coming out in Q2 of this year, 2025, and I gotta tell you, when Olden Era comes out, I'm going to do my very, very best to be at the forefront. I'm going to do my best to learn everything I can about the game. I'm going to work hard to develop new strategies, figure out, number one, what is meta, and then immediately I'm going to attempt to buck that meta and just play in a way that is both fun and optimal. I hope and I believe that it's going to take a lot of normal strategy and tactics that you might find in any of the other Heroes of Might and Magic games. There's a lot of things that make a lot of sense from game to game, but I think that there's also going to be some new twists, and I'm very excited to find out what those new twists are. Right there at the very end, I did note, as I'm looking at what my purchases are here, I noted that there is a tree city not too far away from this Warlock castle, and I also noted that there is in fact a treasure chest that is unclaimed. Perhaps the red player suffered a bit of an early defeat that I have not yet accounted for. They start off with one hero and they generally purchase another hero very, very quickly. But in this case, we only really saw the one red hero. Is there another red hero to be had? Aha! There he is. It's Wrathmont. Although he only has centaurs and gargoyles to his name, it looks like he went as far north as he could to explore, and so that left the south open for our plundering, and oh boy, do we like to plunder. We truly do. Guardians don't really bother me at this point. It seems that we are going to be able to roll through goblins and a couple of these low-level creatures. It does not appear that this map has many high-level defenders. I am trading off these troops very quickly with Rebecca. I'm considering trying to get Castor back into the Warlock castle there so that he can pick up all of his mana. And so in the meantime, one thing that I'm doing better on this map than I did for the first two playthroughs was I am using multiple heroes. Sometimes Phixfox has a little bit of a certain level of rigidity when it comes down to whether or not I'm using one hero or two. I am very, very comfortable with using one hero, but this scenario in particular, I think that you need a couple of strong heroes, at least in the very early game. And so I've identified that as one of the different ways that I can improve if I'm to continue to playing Heroes of Might and Magic and having a ton of fun with the series. I need to do a better job of letting my secondary heroes have decent troops, or I need some decent strategy that will allow me to be effective with less troops. I really like those early battles with knights and barbarians where it's a lot of ground-based troops and it's fairly easy to see what's right in front of you. And so I see no reason why those particular skills and strategies ought not to transfer over to what I'm talking about here and getting some nice momentum with secondary heroes. It's an opportunity. That's all it really is. If you only have one hero, you only have so much opportunity on the map. And if you have multiple heroes, that just increases the amount of opportunity you have. And so any underutilization of those secondary, third, tertiary heroes, that is ultimately going to be to your detriment. By the way, this fight is not my favorite fight I've ever fought. These archers are a little bit pesky to deal with. It is much like with the strategy for Castor, a long, slow battle of attrition as we are trying to get the magic arrow onto as many of these stacks as possible, and then simply trying to choose where we can limit the damage onto ourselves. As you can see, 2 stacks of 2, 1 stack of 5. How do you want to fight this fight? It's your choice. Long story short, oh, maybe it was a couple more than I thought there. It looks like these peasants are going to watch the battle from their vantage point and slowly creep up. Will they get into the fight in time? I don't really know, but I got a feeling that they're going to get hit in the face pretty quickly. All the same, magic arrows, let's continue to let those do their work on the battlefield here. So one of my favorite things about the Sorceresses, while they do not necessarily fare well in the late game, their knowledge allows you to spam many of these spells early on. I don't think that there's a better user of the magic arrow spell than the Sorceresses. Of course, when you have 30 spell points, that's going to be 10 uses of the magic arrow, whereas a Necromancer or a Warlock or a Wizard, somebody who only has +2 knowledge to start off with, they're only going to get 6 casts of the magic arrow off. And so that one additional bit of spell power does increase your effectiveness and the length of time that you can go and fight these fights drastically. It's a huge deal. And so the sorceresses making use of that early magic arrow, pretty big deal. I think that there's probably no other faction that would benefit more from an early game mage guild, in my personal opinion. Although you have many arguments for, say, the Warlocks, because of course the Warlocks have some excellent early game scouting troops. There is some value. Everybody can make use of it. I just think that the Sorceresses do the very best job. We are trying to keep those troops in the castle. I've got a feeling that our friend Wrathmont is coming towards the castle with murderous intent in his eyes. As far as I'm aware, he does not have another castle. That is probably Red's last hero. And so he is probably hunting for another castle, something to stave off elimination, even if it is just for another 7 days. So I'm sure that we are going to be seeing him very, very soon. If he turns around, I imagine that that's either because he certainly believes he cannot win that fight at all, or it might be possible that he just doesn't see us. Although, whenever you have a Warlock with scouting, I tend to believe that they can see much further than you would normally expect. Of course, here in FHeroes2, he is currently outside of the range of our castle. There used to be a couple of benefits, bonuses that the AI used to receive as part of Heroes Might and Magic 2 Gold, and that still carried on with the early game of FHeroes2 as the developers were getting the AI into a spot that they were comfortable with, a spot that they liked, and they gave the AI some additional scouting radius, in part because they didn't like the early game scouting pattern or the algorithm for the early game scouts. And so a little bit of extra scouting radius went a long way for that. They have since stripped that away, and so that is no longer a concern. Wrathmont absolutely was close enough there as he stole that ore mine. Remember that. He was absolutely close enough to steal our castle, and he still turned around. Some sense of self-preservation, I am sure, but if that's not your best fight, I surely do not know what is. We do have 2 yellow heroes coming in from the north. I'm trying to get my forces in a position where I can feel comfortable trying to defend against these invaders, and also I can be effective in getting that +2 knowledge. There's the minor scroll, and I'm kind of worried that some other hero is going to want to take it. I'm noting here that Rebecca is probably going to be my best defender of this castle, but I'm a little bit sad to see that I did not get her the magic arrow as a defender. That would be a big deal, absolute big deal for the reasons we've talked about. I'm saying to myself, well, Wrathmont's probably not going to get those gargoyles. Why don't I just pick up this treasure over here? If I miss this opportunity now, I might regret it later. Worth noting that we did just pick up on this day for the Minotaurs, it is the Labyrinth. So we did pick up the Labyrinth just a little bit ago. We are grabbing a spellbook for Tyro here. Nice to know that we do have the haste on top of the new magic arrow. Wrathmont wants nothing to do with us. His time is running very short, but still, he is staying away from us. Yellow is pushing more into our territory from the west, and I'm not feeling very comfortable or confident here. Neither of those armies are particularly tough, and yet 2 of them together, I could see myself potentially fighting one fight and winning, and then fighting the second fight and losing, simply because I take some level of attrition. What a bad spot to be in, fighting battle dwarves who have magical resistance, and your primary bit of strength and support is a magic arrow. Thank goodness we have not 1, but 2 of these Hydras. Unfortunately, the pre-game auto battle seems to anticipate that this is going to result in some heavy losses, and as we're going to see in just a little bit, they are absolutely right. This stone skin is going to ensure that Phixfox can't mess up this fight too bad. Right now, the battle dwarves are in range of the centaurs. That's going to be a little bit of a tough deal. I don't want the gargoyles to have to take this damage if they don't want to. I'm considering, how do I conserve spell points so that way in the next fight I still might have some. A lot of factors going into this fight, and it's a little bit like other games that have you strategize 1 or 2 steps ahead. You would love to use a couple of spells here, but especially given that the dwarves might resist the spell entirely, it seems obvious to me that there's no way that we can justify spending spells that might be handy later. whereas right now they might be useless. We are going to get, I can tell you, and I think that you can see this coming, we're going to get an amazing surround here. And usually when we talk about a surround, we're talking about a surround in games like in the RTS genre, things like Warcraft 3, things like Age of Empires. You surround your enemy, and because they are surrounded, they are not able to escape. You're able to kind of pin them in. In this case, when I say we're going to get a really nice surround, I mean that our Hydra is going to get a really nice surround. Check this out. 2 Hydras are going to attack 4 stacks of Battle Dwarves here. Boof. Oh. Doing 74 damage. That killed at least 2 Battle Dwarves in each stack. 2, 4, 6, 8 Battle Dwarves down. That feels pretty good. Anytime that you can make excellent use of your Hydras, you're feeling great. Oh, and every single retaliation. Oh my goodness. If the Hydras were not so slow, they might be one of the most perfect units in the game. I love that, of course, the game designers did make a couple of caveats with their power budget. And whenever people are talking about making a new faction for Heroes Might and Magic 3 or 2, I hope that they take a similar approach. FHeroes2 is going to have modding support in the future. For now, I'm going to be so very grateful when they finish their work on the map editor, which is taken off and better than ever. But when there is mod support and people are trying to make new factions and do new fun stuff and rebalance things and make new numbers, I hope that they keep in mind the concept of power budget. In a game, for example, in the MOBA genre, things like Dota or things like League of Legends, you have your heroes, and in order for them to exist in an ecosystem, you do have to have a certain amount of power budget. This power budget involving the idea that you can only do so much. You may be very, very strong and do tons of damage, but if you're also very fast, then it's absolutely unfair. So having some things be very strong and some things very weak makes an awful lot of sense. You also see this in first-person shooter genre types of games. For example, that's the reason why an operator or the op is very difficult to balance in games like CSGO or Valorant, because it's a one-shot, one-kill gun, so it has the highest damage. And so what do you do to nerf it? You affect its reload speed, you affect its ability in close range, and even so, if it's one shot, one kill, it's very difficult to make it so bad at one shot, one kill that it still can exist in the ecosystem of the game. Folks, red player has just been vanquished. Wrathmont is gone. Very interesting to note that that second level shrine is a summoned boat and not something nicer. If it was a cold ray, a lightning bolt, I think that we would be making absolute headway over to that area immediately. We've got tons of spell power here on Wrathmont. I am sure that he would love to do some serious damage. We are leaving some movement points here on the table for Castor. We don't want him to get too close to where Atlas and this other hero might attack him. And so for that reason, we are staying just a little bit out of range, hoping perhaps that the enemy might pick up the Minor Scroll of Knowledge against those gargoyles. And if they do, that we can prevent them from getting that back. In this moment, I am upset with myself. I had forgotten that red did take that ore mine. And in my mind, in the moment at that game point, I thought to myself, oh no, did I never pick up that ore mine? Has it been month 1, week 3, day 1, and I still haven't picked that up? Thankfully, that is not the case. We've only been short on that ore for about 6 days or so that's not too bad. But all the same, anytime you do not have resources that you otherwise would like to have, you're feeling pretty bad. This is a little bit interesting. Once again, I'm counting my steps. I feel like I must take out Dimitri here. I do not want him to get away for free, but I'm worried that I'm going to run out of movement points. Those 2-speed Hydras, again, really nice to have in the fight, but I'm counting out my steps. Will I be able to do the resupply here from Tyro and also get on over to this hero Dimitri? And I ultimately decide, yes, I think it's going to be there. It's going to be very close, but I do believe that I'm going to be able to make it. You do have to count basically on dirt 100 movement points for a north, a south, an east, or a western movement, but then it can get a little tricky because there is a multiplier in the event that you're going in a diagonal. So I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person that if I have a budget and I'm going shopping for groceries or things at the store, and there's multiple items that I'm going to be putting into my cart, I generally personally try and overestimate. If an item is $1.83, I just round up and I call it $2. So that way I don't have to worry about getting to the checkout and realizing that I'm $1 or $2 short. So in that same sense, I was hoping that I didn't have to cut it so close here with the movement points, and it looks like I had just a little bit left over. Yay for Phixfox. Good job. I say good job. He can't hear me. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. But you care. I care. We care. And we are calling out through time and space saying, why did you pick up the waterfall for 8 additional centaurs on day 1? Huh? It's little things like that that you wish you could go back in time and just make it a little bit better. We do see for the first time some enemies here to the south. That's going to be the orange Necromancer player. In previous playthroughs, they've caused us some major issues. Why is that? So the Necromancers are very unique because they are even better than the Sorceresses as far as getting up to full power by the mid game. And here's how I mean. Necromancers are a wonderful faction because you don't have to go down the path of getting vampires if you don't want to. Although, if you are able to get up to the vampire lords, you have a absolutely terrifying stack of creatures that is near unkillable. But you can ignore the vampires entirely in the build order and go into power liches and then go into the laboratory for the bone dragons. And on resource-starved maps, Necromancers are going to tend to do very well because the laboratory costs 5 of each resource as opposed to 20 crystal or 20 mercury or 20 sulfur or 20 gems. And so really it's nice to know that there is a faction, if you feel like you are lacking an advantage on a certain map because it's very resource starved, that you have an option with the Necromancers. If you can get just a couple of patches of the precious resources, you may very well be able to get all the way into the bone dragons and have a huge power spike at a very, very nice time. We are fighting this fight and not loving it, and we're going to take some losses, but all the same, the prize here, recall, if you would, is a +2 to our knowledge. We've got 5+ spell power at this point. We would love any amount of the knowledge so that way we can continue to roll. It's always the question of which is better, attack or defense, which is better, the spell power or the knowledge. In this case, we are lacking so much knowledge that I would give my left arm for just a little bit of extra knowledge, and in this case it will cost us maybe a few troops, although now that I think about it, I think it looks like I worked this out perfectly. And I didn't lose a single troop. I chalked that up to juggling damage. I know that the druids have 25 hit points, and I was able to get the gargoyles off kilter with a couple of magic arrows. I was able to remove some of their toughest stacks, and it worked out fine. So not often am I able to do a fight that cleanly. In this case, that felt pretty good. We are, for the first time, having Tyro go south. I forget at this point that he's going to run into a couple of dwarves, the dwarves guarding a gem mine, and then he's going to go around. But we are getting ourselves some additional intel on this map. We are feeling pretty okay. We haven't seen any enemies truly come through our borders. Nobody has been touching the snow yet, going through boars and the likes. And so we feel like we have a little bit of breathing room, but we also want to be pretty smart about this. I think that right now we start as we see the cold ray coming through from the Mage Guild in the Warlock Castle. I feel like I missed an opportunity in this playthrough, and here's what I mean. We mentioned in previous playthroughs that we here in the center have 1 precious resource generating mine each. We do not have any real deficits. And so because we don't have any deficits, that potentially leads us into getting Mage Guild levels. And while 6th level creatures are, in my opinion, if you're going to go for phoenixes, bone dragons, for titans, or for dragons, those 6th level creatures are going to be better than spells in general. But if you are barbarians or knights, I think you might as well go for additional levels of Mage Guild because your 6th level creatures are still pretty weak. Even in this case, I think that if we were able to manage getting both Mage Guild investment and the Dragon Spire, I think that we would have done even better than we end up doing. There's going to be some major hiccups down the road, but just keep that in mind as a potential missed opportunity, knowing that we have all of these mines here. And while we have not cast view mines in this game, we have cast the view mines in previous games, and we know that the enemies only have at their disposal wood, ore, and gold. So there's no other real precious resource generating mines out and about. Folks, we got 60 points of damage each here on this magic arrow. That means that we've got 6 spell power. Because we picked up that scroll not too long ago, we are going to be able to continually pelt these swordsmen before they get into us. However, we are going to experience a little bit higher losses than I really anticipated. I remember feeling like this was a little bit spicier of a fight than I really wanted to take, but I more or less just misprioritized which troops should go where. I would have preferred to have brought the Hydras along, especially as opposed to these 4 archers. Why do I need 4 archers in this fight? I don't know, but I did bring them along, and so as you can see, they're doing a better job of just standing in the way than they are of doing damage. And you know what can do just as good of a job of that and also do some damage? That's right, the Hydra. So I might as well have brought the 2-speed Hydra anyway. Probably not a big miss, but if we did not have the magic arrow, as you have already seen so far, the auto combat indicates that we would have taken some pretty heavy losses and in fact probably would have lost. I don't know if I could have made the fight go much better. I gotta tell you though, sacrificing those sprites to prevent these swordsmen here at the bottom from walking all over each other, that did allow these druids to mostly remain unharmed. They're going to take a little bit of damage. We're going to end up losing, looks like 1 druid total, but all in all, we came out pretty well considering that things were looking fairly grim. In this case, you want to kill this bottom stack of master swordsmen if you can. The reason being is that the druids are going to be able to take their shot in just half a second. Yep. So, although it does end up having an elf go down, we're going to get the unencumbered shot from the druid, and that's going to end that there. Sure, 34 skeletons. Why not? I mean, we don't have the necromancy, but we're happy to take any free troops whenever we can get them. And I don't know. Do not ask me because I do not know. Why did Phixfox not immediately pick up the pouch of sulfur for +1 sulfur a day? I know I had a reason. I think I was thinking about movement points, but this is one of those things that drives Phixfox's father absolutely insane. He says, "Phixfox, what are you doing? It was 2 steps out of the way. Go and grab it." And I think that this is one of those times I will 100% agree with him. What goes on in my head when I ignore those easy swag points right next to us? I really think it comes down to me trying to preserve the movement points of my main hero, which, let's be honest, it is a good general principle, but it's not always the rule. There's absolutely going to be times where it is less effective than you otherwise could make it be. And so, yeah, a couple of movement points here and there, that could be the difference between a win and a loss. This is not the case in this point. Phixfox, pick up the sulfur. Once again, we are calling through time and space, asking for just a little bit of help. But now we've secured this main area here. Castor is going to take the bulk of this army, and the whole rest of this scenario is going to be a little bit of a struggle. I gotta tell you, I felt very uncomfortable in this scenario moving forward from this point because mixing troops was not the easiest thing. We had at no point any additional morale from artifacts. We felt like we were always struggling, trying to figure out, okay, do we incorporate some undead into our forces? Do we attempt to corral some of these other troops here? How much of a morale penalty do we want to take here? And it just did not feel very comfortable. Definitely one of those times where you would have preferred any amount of morale, whether it be from leadership or whether it be from a artifact. So in this case, once again, Tyro is continuing to walk south. He's going to run into a brick wall pretty quickly, and he's going to have to be obliged to turn around. We are filling out the sorceress town. I do not end up filling it out too completely. By the way, notice that we just picked up a cold ray here in our sorceress castle, as well as the cold ray that is over in the warlock castle. So 2 level 2 mage guilds. And so Castor is feeling fairly confident that he can push forward, but we do see for the first time the orange champion. I'm saying to myself, we need to go south. As far as priorities go, we do know that we have a knight player to the immediate north. We do know that we have our wizard friend to the east. We do know that we have our necromancer to the south. Now, I don't know exactly what the knights have. I don't know exactly what the wizards have. The wizards could have giants by now. They could have titans by now. I just don't know. If there's titans on the board, that should be your primary goal. If there's crusaders on the board, you should still go for the bone dragons to the south. They're just that much better. It's possible that you could pull the strategy off where you go and pick up the Night Town, pick up Crusaders who do double damage to the undead, and you could have a field day slicing through these undead creatures. But in all actuality, especially in this point, my strategy, my immediate thought process is I see a big enemy, I see a big threat, I'm fairly strong with my magic arrow. I may never be stronger than I am right now. We should probably go and attack as quickly as we can. So we're going to make that happen in just a couple of moments. And so Castor's movement here, he's staying overnight. We are trying to get these troops in this long hero chain over here. As you can tell, we've got dwarves. No, we don't have dwarves. We've got ourselves some Hydras, Minotaurs, Gargoyles, Griffins, and Centaurs in pretty good numbers. This is 2 or 3 weeks worth of growth. Looks like 3 weeks of growth. And so now is the start of us trying to figure out what is the best army for this composition. And you are going to note that I am going to end up taking the Hydras on the road. I feel like, much like the dwarves were a really good use in that siege in the very beginning against the red player, if you have spells and you need as much time as possible to get the spells off, you might as well take the really chunky creatures, because they're going to take a beating, they're going to be tanky, and they're going to buy you more time in order to dive onto the enemy. Look at that. Basic necromancy. It's a sign. We should take it. I ignore that opportunity. In fact, I spit in its face and I continue on my way with my sorceresses and my warlocks. I'm a little upset here that Tyro can't get through. I feel like he should be able to squeeze through there. Tyro, you need to eat 1 or 2 less donuts. It's okay. I'm there with you. We will go and exercise together. No worries. Meanwhile, the rest of my forces, after I've sent the bulk of my forces off in this area, and I'm not sure if left or right makes the most sense, but I do recall here that I do have the advanced pathfinding, and I do see an observation tower. That seems to be my destination, and then I see just the tip top of the Necromancer town. As I'm trying to head south with my main hero, my secondary heroes, I'm not too sure what to do with them at this point. I want them to be effective, but there's not a lot of extra things for them to do. They're just kind of waiting, and so I'm trying to position them somewhat in a hero chain sort of position. I am hoping that when it's time for a new week and time for some additional growth, that they're going to be able to support us. And I am feeling like I should be seeing the Knight player from the north bust into this area soon, but so far no dice, and I do not know what to make of that. We do get a good look at the hero that is guarding the orange Necromancer castle. That's going to be Agar, the Warlock. And we have not seen him yet, so we are not too sure what he has up his sleeve. Worth noting here, I am only barely investing into this Sorceress castle. I have said to myself, look, if I cannot hold on to it, then I would much rather not make the investment and then lose it to someone else. We do see Gwyneth. Gwyneth is coming down. She's got paladins, so silver paladins instead of gold crusaders. I say to myself, look, Rebecca, I don't know if you can really defend this, but you do have all these excess centaurs, a couple of these excess griffins, 14 griffins. That's not a lot, but that might be enough. With a couple of nice spells, you might be able to hold out here and at least make it really costly for this knight player to take you out. We are going to pick up the moat over the left turret or the right turret, and the reason being is because the moat against knight-based forces are pretty efficient. They don't have any flyers. Every single creature is going to have to go through that moat. The problem, as many of us have seen from the Phixfox shorts, is that the knights are bloodthirsty with their blood morale. And it is not uncommon to see them wade waist deep through that moat water and then just carry on and just have another turn for free and cross it as if it did not matter to them at all. We did just pick up a Thieves Guild, so that way we can take a look at this hero. 7 spell power, 6 knowledge, 1 attack, 1 defense. Do we go through Ranlu? Do we go straight for Agar? And as soon as I see Zam over there, I say to myself, my choice is made. I absolutely must go for this Necromancer castle. Why is that? I do not want these bone dragons to combine. If you can divide and conquer your forces, your enemies are going to cower beneath your stare. Oh no, what's this? Bad morale? Where's that coming from? Oh, that's right. Bone dragons, of course, do have the -1 morale to all enemies. They are such a terrifying and ferocious enemy on the battlefield that they will make your forces lose one bit of morale, even if, by the way, you happen to have the Battle Garb of Andrin, which gives you max morale and max luck. So pretty interesting to see that immediately taking effect in this fight. I would really like to have the damage from those 12 druids. We are going to fly the gargoyles out onto the battlefield. They are going to get in the way and they're going to cause a little bit of damage. As you can see, we've already cost the enemy one bone dragon, and so even though there was a retaliation there that was pretty costly, I figured to myself, well, I ought to get off damage while I can, and reducing the stack size by one full bone dragon feels okay to me. The elves there, as you can see, are firing at the mutant zombies. Phixfox, why did the elves fight those mutant zombies? And the reason is because I do not have archery, and doing full damage is worth my time in these numbers. If I'm trying to reduce the enemy's stack sizes as quickly as I can, it just makes sense to me that I might as well do full damage any chance I get. I'm going to have to kill everybody eventually, so I might as well start as soon as I can. In this case, these elves, they're not going to get a good shot. Where do they put the damage on? It's going to be those power liches. There's going to be a little bit of damage there. Now, I must ask the question to these bone dragons, did you mean to park yourself right in front of me? And to that I say, not the way I would have done it, but I salute you in your quest and your journey in life. Peace, my friend, and die very quickly, please. Vampires, gonna have a little bit of a tough time defending against our onslaught. It's amazing what problems you can and can't solve with a cold ray. A dragon, you cannot solve that problem, but an elemental, yeah, well, there's a couple of those that you can't solve that problem with either, but it's always just interesting to make sure you have the right tool for the right job. There's been many a time in my life where I helped my dear sweet dad try and fix the car. And I got to tell you, as a young person, I did not do much help fixing the vehicles, but I did a great job of holding the light while I learned some interesting words. My favorite being, "Come on, you turkey." And I assume as an adult that that was a bolt that was being very stubborn. Whatever the case is, it's always nice to know that the right tool makes the job so much easier. And that is one thing that Phixfox learned from his father and holding a flashlight. So we do take this Necromancy Castle. It is pretty well stocked. We do look at that Mage Guild immediately. Third level spells, that feels like a big up for us. I'm immediately planning on losing this Sorceress Castle. Unless there's a miracle, I don't see the enemy running away from us. We did stay in this castle despite Zam being right here. I said to myself, look, we need to get as many of these spell points as possible. We're going to stay overnight one more time. I'm splitting the Hydras. Why split the Hydras? On the one hand, if you split the Hydras, there's a chance that you're not going to be able to do as much damage with the surround and the multi-hex damaging attack, and so that's an issue. You lose some serious advantage that the Hydras provide. We already saw earlier how against battle dwarves they were very effective because the enemies crowded around and then we attacked them. If the Hydras are not able to get as good of a surround, you lose some of their effectiveness. However, I am also worried at this point about things like Disrupting Ray. I might as well split the stacks because that could potentially avoid a blind, that could avoid some other major disabling spell. If my whole strategy at this point is do damage with a Cold Ray, or at this point we have just found the Lightning Bolt there in the Necromancy Castle, then it seems obvious to me that we are not using the Hydras as an offensive power, but again as a tank, so that way they can simply keep us alive on the battlefield long enough to get out as much spell damage as possible. Folks, we are trading everything here. Why am I trading here on day 6? I'm trading here on day 6. I'm trading in a very particular manner, and the reason is so that way if I lost the Sorceress Castle in the middle, I would still have traded with the power of 3 marketplaces instead of 2. However, we do see Gwyneth moved to the north. She ran away. For what reason, I cannot say. Folks, this is a pretty big fight. 4 bone dragons. Zam has 1 attack, 2 defense, 4 spell power, 2 knowledge. Against my hero, Castor, 1 attack, 1 defense, 7 spell power, 7 knowledge. And oh boy, are we going to be using cold rays and lightning bolts. That lightning bolt is going to do a massive amount of damage, 175 points of damage, 1 full bone dragon every single time it lands. And so even though we are probably not going to be able to walk out of this fight with many troops left, we are absolutely going to be able to walk out of this fight. I think that you can tell that any amount of damage we get onto these bone dragons with our normal troops is going to be negligible. At some point, we're going to have to decide when do we turn our lightning bolts on the power liches that are out in the grassy field there. But in general, bone dragons have the highest attack skill. they are being excited by some enemy spells, we might as well put some damage onto them while we can. Trying to move the Minotaurs out of the way. I do not want them to get hit by another Power Lich blast. The enemies have done me a huge service here. Look at this bottom Hydra. Oh, is this a big 3-person hit? It is, and that feels excellent to me. So nice to see that that worked out pretty well. Phixfox says he wants to prevent a double hex attack from the Power Liches and then immediately moves into a inopportune sort of positioning. Well done. Well done. That's the kind of quality discourse and quality tactics that we enjoy here on the Phixfox gaming channel. And this fight, again, we're trying to clean this up. I think that we're going to be fairly successful. Interesting use of the curse there. I mean, it'll be helpful, but I don't think it's going to be that good. 14 of these mutant zombies left. I am going to cast Lightning Bolt here, even though we're going to have to rush out and take out that Power Lich sometime soon. I'm going to see if I can sneak the Minotaur King all the way out there. Very interesting, by the way. I'm not too sure how or why the Power Liches were only able to attack the Hydras. I suspect, this is just my supposition, I believe that they wanted to do full damage on the Hydra instead of half damage onto the Minotaur King, even though attacking the Minotaur King would have caused 2 hexes worth of damage. By the way, when a ranged creature that has an AoE attack like these Liches attacks a 2-hex creature, they will always target the front hex. And so you're going to have a little bit of a difficult time in getting some of those AoE attacks down if you're not careful. I'm trying to make sure that the enemy will not run here, and I'm not quite sure the best way of making this happen. The Lich has already taken their turn. There's only 1 Lich with 6 HP left, but look, it's not guaranteed that my Minotaur King is going to be able to get that damage off. It looks like the enemy has no sense of self-preservation. They attack with the Royal Mummy, and that leaves me open to pick up 2,600 experience, an Astrolabe, and a couple of nifty artifacts. And folks, is that going to be the end of our Necromancy friend? Whatever they just did there, that was it. I suspect that they found a cliff and they said, well, maybe we can find Atlantis and that will be our new castle. And they leapt headfirst into the ocean. That would sound very dark and macabre, except we do have the whirlpool in which people dive headlong into the ocean. We do have the sirens for whom people dive headlong into the oceans as well. So Phixfox is simply going par for the course here by even suggesting that Orange might have been too cowardly to face me in combat and therefore might have cost me a few artifacts by denying me the opportunity to kill them myself. It feels adequate to me at this point to say that I'm feeling pretty confident. Wouldn't you agree? Is this playthrough going pretty well? Now remember, again, full disclosure, we had a pretty amazing start. I would consider it tip-top luck. I think it's still definitely reasonable and possible to win this scenario without that level of luck, but I feel like this scenario got a little crazy on us, and so not the way I would have loved to have won this scenario, but since we got that nice fast start, we have also been making some pretty good choices. And one new choice that we're going to start making that's going to help us be pretty effective is we're going to look for this ultimate artifact. What it is, we're not too sure, but I see immediately some beach that looks like it might work well in our favor. I see that there's 2 obelisks that are to my south, or excuse me, my north of this Necromancy castle, to the northwest and to the northeast. 1 red one there near the witch's hut, and that blue one that we've already indicated that we were heading to. And if the ultimate artifact is near where I think it is, and I do believe it's pretty close to that beach area that we've already indicated, we're probably going to be trying to walk out of here with some additional forces and hopefully a +12 to attack or a +12 to defense. We will have to wait and see. Folks, Tyro here does have a spell book, so we're going to try and save him. He is going to be up against Atlas here. Atlas is going to let his heroes get a little bit of good luck, but unfortunately for him, he's not going to be able to take us down. I did want to fight this fight just to make sure that I could see what this enemy had. Atlas is not scary for me, and I'm not even sure if Atlas was Yellow's primary hero. We did see Dimitri earlier. I don't think that was their primary hero either. I think that we never really do run into Yellow's primary hero because the wizards and them do end up fighting a little bit. And there it is in the puzzle pieces. We do see confirmation that is absolutely the Necromancer castle in the puzzle map there on the right hand side. And so we know without a doubt that the artifact is nearby. It's simply going to be a matter of getting enough shovels and digging enough. Folks, we are going to send Luna with these dragons. She's going to kind of clear to the south a little bit there. I want to get up to black dragons always, of course. But at this point, I'm saying to myself, look, even though I don't have phoenixes in my center castle, I do have bone dragons and I do have green dragons. I feel like I can wash over this map. And while I'm searching for this artifact, it actually slows me down enough that it causes me some grief. This scenario should probably have been over in the next 10 minutes, but Phixfox makes a couple of pretty critical errors. Number one, by going for this ultimate artifact that was not really necessary, and by not getting it in the first couple of digs, I cost myself valuable time that allows one of the enemy players to get a huge power spike. Now, who could that be? Do you think it's the Knights? Is their power spike going from Paladins to Crusaders? No! Do you think it's the Wizards? Did the Wizards pick up a power spike by going into Titans, perhaps? Yes! And we see Jezebel here with a few Titans. And what I should have done here is I should have immediately taken those green dragons that are coming up, and I should have sent them onto Castor immediately, and Castor should have then immediately gone to fight the wizards before I could really let those Titans breathe. It seems that the AI is doing an excellent job, as the FHeroes2 team would have hoped, and the FHeroes2 AI is trading at their trading post for the resources necessary to purchase any number of creatures that might support them. In the past, the AI didn't really do a good job. They would have tons of excess resources, but not be smart enough to say, well, I need gold, but I don't have gold. I would like Titans, but I don't have Titans. And so it was suboptimal. And it's very nice that the FHeroes2 team is making things much harder on us. I think it's pretty hard. I'm always interested to hear your opinions, by the way. Whether or not you personally play FHeroes2 or if you prefer Heroes of Might and Magic 2, the standard gold edition. One of the biggest changes for me, and one of the reasons why I will never go back to original Heroes of Might and Magic 2, is that the AI is so good and so quality. It could be hard. Hard is a thing, but quality and good is another thing entirely. In the same way that if you're eating spicy food, there is spicy food and there is flavorful food. Something can be spicy and it's simply hot and it will melt your face off. Something can also be spicy and enjoyable because it's flavorful and just good. I feel like FHeroes2, I can kind of relate this conversation to that, where it is a good AI, but it also does a lot of things that I really, really enjoy. It removes the omniscience. It takes care of some of the issues that you could exploit with the Heroes of Might and Magic 2 Gold. It is worth noting that the FHeroes2 AI does have some exploitations that you can possibly do. You tend to get to know your opponent the longer you play against it, and then you can make good educated guesses as to where it's going to go and what it's going to do. But in general, I do believe it plays better all around. I don't even say generally. It does. It just does. So, hopefully that conversation makes sense to you. But with that being said, other thing that the FHeroes2 has that I will never turn away from is this. I cannot play on the resolution 800 by 600 ever again. I just can't do it. I simply can't. FHeroes2 allows me to play in this bigger sort of format here. And while this may be a little bit more difficult for people to see because the objects on the adventure map might be a little bit smaller, I really do love being able to have a bigger view of the map. It helps me personally strategize better. And the wonderful thing about it is that if that doesn't work for you, or if you prefer the original dimensions, then just play on the original dimensions. And how great is it that we have the opportunity to choose whatever works best for us. But I digress. So we do have Jezebel. Jezebel is coming on into this area, and I'm saying to myself, I've got 4 green dragons, and I've got my main hero. I think I ought to fight you. Oh no. Will we be successful here? Castor, 1 and 1 for the attack and defense, 7 power, 6 knowledge. Jezebel though, 4 attack, a little bit of defense on her too. She's not a bad hero. Unfortunately here, this is a bit of an error. I felt like I needed to repel the enemy from my borders, and I do an okay job at that. But what would have been much better than defeating this enemy head on? I should have found a way to try and slip behind them, because green dragons compared to these titans is really a mismatch. I'm just not going to do as well as I would like. We haven't lost a dragon yet. We're going to kill probably one titan here. It looks like we do. No, we do not. But we're going to be down to 3 green dragons here. And it doesn't help when rocks get good luck. It doesn't help when the enemy crowds around them very effectively. And the lightning bolts, again, they take a little bit of time to dish out. We're down to 2 green dragons at this point. They have just lost 1 full titan. And so you feel this sense of, hey, wait a second, that's 6,000 resources, 6,000 gold that I've just kind of spent on these dragons. Oh, wait, nope. Green dragons are 2,000 gold each and 1 sulfur. Never mind, excuse me. 4,000 gold, but still, you kind of get this sense of, hey, wait a second, this feels very, very costly. Dragons, of course, an excellent unit, and you say to yourself, would it have been better if we'd have just held on to the extra 50 hit points? Maybe we would have lost 1 less dragon somehow. Maybe going 1 turn earlier with a 5 speed would have been better for us. Whatever the case is, it's pretty obvious that with only 1 out of 4 dragons remaining at this point, that this fight was not my favorite fight. And so, while we are getting bone dragons, while we are getting green dragons, the enemy has titans, and we are going to outgrow them. It feels obvious that we should eventually win, and yet it gives me fits. One of the things that we've seen so far is issues with morale. If the enemy has bone dragons against you, you're going to lose some bit of morale, and that's something to be expected. And then if I try and use my bone dragons along with my regular dragons, I'm also going to end up losing a little bit there, because I'm going to have to take the undead penalty in my army, and I'm not going to get the +1 morale for having troops of all 1 alignment. So you see there's a couple of issues with trying to mix these troops from the Necromancy castle with the troops from the Warlock castle. I would have been much better off getting up to Phoenixes, no matter the cost, and then using them in conjunction with the dragons, and then having a second hero take the Necromancer army and having 1 completely undead army and 1 completely alive army to move forward. You can see in just a little bit that we're going to end up mixing those troops to try and compensate for our weakness against titans, but it's not going to go as well as we would have hoped. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I mentioned earlier that digging for this ultimate artifact took much more time than I kind of anticipated. I think it's pretty obvious from looking at the puzzle picture that I'm not digging in the most correct spot here just at the moment. I was kind of closer to the tip of that little alcove, that little inlet, and that seemed to be the most appropriate place. I figured that the very center of the puzzle was actually in the water, and so I figured it was closer to the top of the land feature there, but now I am rethinking that, and I'm going more closer to the right-hand side. If you want to avoid digging too much, the answer is simple. Go and find more obelisks. I know it, you know it, we all know it, but it doesn't really help until we find the artifact and we feel much better about it. Are we going to make it happen here? And we do. That's going to be the Golden Goose for 10,000 gold extra per day. And I have to tell you, I immediately get overconfident in a way that is dangerous. I would have been much better off getting any amount of attack, any amount of defense, any amount of spell power. Knowledge I probably could have done without, but the 2 worst ultimate artifacts in this case at this time are number 1, the Golden Goose, and number 2, the Book of Knowledge for the +12 knowledge. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to have any gold problems from here on out. I'm going to do exceedingly well in raising an army. I've got 3 castles against these enemies' 2 castles. I'm just going to overwhelm them with sheer forces. That's what I think, but we run into some major issues. And so we're going to hope that that doesn't hurt us too bad. And I'm going to do something here. I'm actually going to jump ahead in the action just a tiny bit. We're going to clear out some forces here. There is, of course, Atlas. He's running around our Warlock castle, but not attacking. We've got adequate defenders there. We have taken out 1 swath of Titans. There's going to be many more to follow. And I'm going to make a very bad decision here. I am going to go, instead of towards the Titans and the Wizards to the east, I'm going to go north towards the Knights. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. Stop it. And so let me just kind of catch myself up to speed there to some better parts as I marshal my forces around. And we have Castor, who's made his way over here to the Warlock Castle. So we do have Atlas to the south. We've gotten ourselves up to Red Dragons. I realized in that previous fight that things were not going nearly as well as I would have hoped. And so Castor is trying to fight Titans with Red Dragons, which is still a better proposition. But rather than go for Atlas, we're going to go north. We do have Wrathmont to the south, who is marshaling the undead forces there towards the west, from the south into the west, and so he's going to try and head off Atlas, and Atlas is not going to have an opportunity to steal a castle from us. It will be Wrathmont that does eventually track him down. So we've seen a little bit more aggression since we last checked in about 4 turns ago, and the Warlocks, we've seen several Titans in some random wandering armies, and I've lost a little bit of count. At this point, I say to myself, well, hold on, wait a second. Are those the same Titans, just on a different enemy force? Are heroes trading these troops back and forth, and I am misreading their numbers? Or are there really somewhere in the range of several to a pack of Titans out there? If there's a pack of Titans against my 4 Red Dragons, I'm having a real bad time. But if it's the same ones, then I'm doing better. We're going to find out exactly what the enemy's forces are fairly quickly, but for now we're trying to scout into this area. I do believe that we are going to fall prey to some aggression here from the southwest here. It's going to be Aragon the Barbarian taking on Craghack. Craghack, just a level 1 hero. He did pick up a couple of freebies. I say to myself, nope, I'm not even going to fight that fight. It's just not worth it. And meanwhile, Gwyneth, these poor knights, it feels like they never had a chance in this scenario. They just never got any traction. Not at one point. So we do see Arie the Warlock. So green has kind of pushed yellow from their home castle into that more southern range, kind of pushed them into us, which is unfortunate. We don't want to really aggress against them. We would prefer for the enemies to fight each other, but at this point, we'll take whatever we can. We are able to get the Black Tower in just a moment. I hope that Phixfox does that. I'm pretty sure he saw that. Did you see that? Come on, Phixfox. Come on, Phixfox, don't fail me now. It's day 7. Maybe Phixfox will do it tomorrow and hope that Atlas just can't reach my main castle. If that's the case, then Phixfox likes to play it loose and fast. If that's the case, then Phixfox needs to find a new thrill-seeking hobby. Heroes of Might and Magic 2 is not necessarily the time for a new thrill-seeking hobby. I think you can do some other stuff, and oh no. Oh no. Remember, dragon growth. Green dragon growth, as it were. Yeah, that's different than red dragon growth. And so we do lose the opportunities to pick up an additional 5 dragons because we upgraded from green to red, but you can't possibly know that, and we made the best decision at the time with the information that we had. And so I don't have any regrets. I make no apologies. It is what it is. These things do happen. So folks, we're currently here on month 2, week 3, day 1, and we have a choice. We can go for this Knight Castle, or we can fight Arie the Warlock. We choose to ignore Arie the Warlock. I was a little bit worried about the Knights picking up 1 additional week's worth of forces here, and so I did decide to go after them instead of Arie. I figured to myself, hey, we will pick up Arie whenever we can. A 3rd level Mage Guild, just in case we get something nice, and we are out of movement points. But again, we're getting this scouting here on this other side with Rebecca, and what do we see there? We see Sarakin the Wizard. Sarakin the Green Wizard has several Titans, and so there is a few Titans on Arie, and there are several Titans there on Sarakin. What to do? How do we deal with this force? You've got a lot of spell points, you've got a lot of spell power, you've got some solid lightning bolts, but what do you do to make sure that this fight really goes the way you want it to? Time will tell if we're successful in managing our forces and overwhelming this guy, but clearly they have a bit of a jump on us with these Titans. 9 Titans against 4 dragons, not to mention the few Titans that we still have to defeat. We want to keep these forces from joining up, and so we feel obligated to go and attack Arie as soon as possible. We do pick up this 4th level mage guild here, and I don't think I love this choice. We do pick up the view all, but this castle is not a priority, and so investing in a mage guild here doesn't feel particularly safe. It just feels kind of bad. I'm noting the positions of the heroes. It looks like there's 2 green heroes on the map, 1 yellow hero, so yellow does have just 1 hero left before all is lost for them, but they are currently wandering around in a desert, probably having a real bad time. We do experience this glorious victory here, and we are happy to see that the Titan count here is exceedingly low. 200 points of damage for our lightning bolts. I'm trying to consider what's the best way of fighting this fight without losing any forces. You know that I feel a little, maybe overconfident when I lightning bolt halflings instead of titans. But again, it was more in the sense of trying to prevent losses where I did not need them. Otherwise, why would you send 24 griffins over to kill 1 single peasant? In all honesty, you just don't do that. You just don't do that. No. Stop it. Very conscientious of Phixfox there to use the cold ray instead of the lightning bolt to kill those titans. I just noted that the damage was sufficient for only the cold ray. There was no reason to spend that 1 extra spell point. We around here are very, very frugal. By the way, I have to tell you, as a fun little aside, I had a fun little fight with some people the other day. Oh, I guess we don't have fights in our professional lives. We have disagreements. We have status meetings and things like that. I had a little bit of an issue with the folks from my payroll. They decided that they did not want to pay me for training that I did. And you know what? I said to that, I said, I don't care, you're going to pay me or else. Long story short, my negotiation skills are pretty blunted because I have not had to really negotiate an awful lot in my life. I negotiate for major purchases. In America, it's pretty common for us to negotiate, for example, a vehicle, a car, a motorcycle, something over the price of $1,000. I wish I was like my cousin, who spent a significant amount of time in the Dominican Republic, where he became good at negotiating for everything, because in the Dominican Republic, where he spent some time, he would, on a day-to-day basis, per the culture, just barter and negotiate for everything from groceries to shoes to other goods. And so I wish I was better at it. I'm not nearly as good as I could be or should be, but yeah, I was eventually able to get them to see things from my point of view. And I think that the thing that helped them see things my way was this. I said, look, I love what you're doing. I just mentioned a minute ago that being frugal with that 1 spell point, that was a good thing. Being frugal, that's a virtue. Being conscientious and fiscally responsible, that's a virtue. That's a good thing. But you know what is also a good thing? Justice and fairness. And I work in a field and in a position every day of my life, pretty much, where everything I do is based around justice and fairness. And so I have a very strong sense of that. And if I worked, you'd need to pay me. That's just the way it goes. So ultimately, I don't know if that helped or hurt my position to try and bring that level of principles and morality into the situation. But if it ultimately ended up working, I guess we'll go with it. Who can say? Who can say? I suppose if it was the wrong thing to do, that they should not have given in, because at this point now they've encouraged me to think, aha, now I know how the world works. Now I know the way that these things work, when really perhaps I just don't. Folks, I am under a little bit of pressure in this situation. So we're doing our hero chains here, and I'm going to miss a big hero chain opportunity that I really wanted to make. So I got some troops coming from the Warlock Castle. They are there. I believe it's on Carlon. Carlon needs to make the jump over to Wrathmont there, who's by the ore mine. He needs to make the jump up to Luna. Luna makes the jump to Castor. It's a pretty simple situation. I just did my thing out of turn order, and then what ends up happening is I go into this upcoming fight without my full forces, like shy 3 red dragons. Do you think that 3 red dragons matters in a fight like this? I submit to you that the answer is yes, but I don't realize until right about, not yet. I'll tell you when I realize my mistake, but I wanted to get in this area as quickly as I could because I didn't want the enemy to go into the Night Castle and then build a 5th level mage guild and get a really nice spell. Aha, now I've realized my mistake. And I'm embarrassed. And I've got all these extra troops clogging up these heroes, and I say to myself, this is the part where I really am struggling to get the right troops on the right hero in the right spot at the right time. Yeah. It's a bit of a mess, isn't it? So, not the way I would have liked to have done it, but it is the way that I did do it. And our army going into this fight. Castor here against the man, the myth, the legend, Sarakin the Wizard. It's going to be a bit of a titanic struggle, and I'm not going to allow him to do much here. Sarakin does defeat the castle, but he runs out of movement points just outside of this castle, and so I'm going to try and eliminate some of these forces. I fought this fight really just to be kind of cheeky here. I'm going to immediately spend all of my damaging spell points on halflings for whatever reason. I just did not think that I could kill one full titan, and so I kind of tried to bring down the numbers of all these other minor players in this upcoming confrontation. A good choice, a bad choice. You can let me know what you think about that, but I probably could have done at least 1 or 2 of the Magi. That might have been better than killing 40 halflings, but it felt like killing the halflings just made more sense because they were more of a for sure thing, more of a guarantee. That's why I ended up doing so. It was 2 of the rocks and a couple of halflings that ended up going down there. Immediately, I realized that I have not defended this castle as well as I wanted to. I am grateful that the enemy did not steal this Necromancer castle from me. Aragon is looking pretty upset, but with the power of friendship and the power of lightning bolts, I think I'm going to be able to defend this castle without too much issue. Let's get rid of this 1 archer. Let's get rid of this 1 gargoyle and the centaurs. Why the centaurs as well? You don't want troops of 4 alignments, especially when one of those alignments is the mutant zombies. So I don't think that Aragon is going to want to attack us. It's day 6. We're going to plan on waiting 2 days until we get some reinforcements. I think a couple of bone dragons, that will fix my problems with him. I'm still moving around these other excess troops, but they are really not the main fight. I'm more or less trying to reset my hero chains here. Of course, hero chains are very useful in trying to get forces where they ought to be, doing what they ought to be doing. And again, I make a mistake here. Luna has dragons. Look at these troops. These troops can be so very useful in this fight. And I say to myself, well, I got 9 bone dragons and 4 of these red dragons. I think I can still take Sarakin, and this way he does not get into this night castle. This is ultimately going to be overconfidence. And why is this overconfidence? I've got 2 attack, 1 defense. I've got about 7 or 8 spell power. I've got a sufficient amount of knowledge, about 60 something spell points. I'm doing 200 damage with my lightning bolts. But guess what? That's the only damage I have. And I'm not even going to realize why for a couple of seconds. We just lose 2 bone dragons there. Titans do 400 points of damage. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to take this retaliation. And have I killed a Titan yet? No, I haven't. Okay, I finally killed my first Titan. Yay for me. But the 200 bits of damage from the lightning bolt is not consistent, but it is my best damage. Again, why is that? I'll tell you when I remember. I'll tell you when I figure that out. By the way, interesting point for the haste. Why did I cast the haste instead of the lightning bolt there? I cast the haste because I figured that these Hydras would need to get into the fight. And the haste is going to last for multiple turns, so you want to cast the haste early on in the fight instead of later on. Of course, in this case, when the Hydras then get bad morale, you're feeling kind of dumb. So it was still the right play, just the bad morale with the bone dragons really not working for me. We've already gone through 9 full bone dragons. Not a good time. Not a good time. Why am I doing so poorly here? I'm trying to work this out in my mind. I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to lose everybody, but maybe the Hydras? I think, no, that can't be right. I'm sure I can do this fight better. Bad morale, that doesn't help. 2 attack, 1 defense. Let's roast ourselves with our double hex attack. 5 Titans left. They are stone skinned. And at this point, I realize the defense is incredibly high. At this point, I realize that with my 2 attack, these Titans are nigh unkillable because my attack skill is so low, and Sarakin the Wizard has at this point 7 defense. He's got 7 defense. And all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, wait, am I going to be able to outlast these Titans? I'm not even doing all that much damage. I can't guarantee some amount of damage simply because the Hydras are going to run into some issues. Here it is, I realize, oh, 7 defense, that's much more than I bargained for. And that was the reason why these Titans have just stuck around for so very, very long. We're going to run into another issue here in this fight that I didn't really anticipate. And that's going to be that with the bad morale and only the Hydras left, I'm going to miss out on some damage earlier on. That basically would have killed one more Titan 1 extra turn earlier. That would have saved me some more damage. And now with the Hydras losing their haste ability, the enemy is appropriately using spacing to their advantage. I say to myself, look, there's 3 Titans left. There's 2 Titans left. There's no reason to stick around in this fight. We are going to have to depart in shame. Do you think that 3 extra red dragons would have helped in this situation? I tell you, it absolutely would have. Thankfully, we're not too far away from a new week, but I say to myself, that's it. I'm done. You're going to find me getting black dragons in very, very short order. I'm looking at, okay, what's it going to take to get this red tower? I'm saying to myself, okay, I need to pull out all the stops. I've got the golden goose. I have the golden goose. I'm getting 10,000 gold per day. I can't possibly mess this up. But there's a part of me that worries. I've experienced a very interesting phenomenon, and it was on the excellent Heroes of Might and Magic 2 map known as Beltway. Once upon a time, Phixfox was playing Beltway by himself. This was off camera. You're not going to find a recording of this anywhere. Phixfox wanted to just kind of explore the whole rest of the map after I had mostly, I say mostly, subjugated my enemies. I had 1 enemy remaining. And while I wasn't paying attention, the enemy took 1 castle, and then another, and then another. And much like metaphorical quicksand, all of a sudden, I had the game very well in hand at one point and was now losing. It was devastating. So I have experienced firsthand what it feels like when you take your foot off the gas pedal in Heroes of Might and Magic 2. Until you are able to absolutely overwhelm and outlast your enemy, these advantages don't necessarily mean anything. Remember that there is still a fistful of Titans up there on Sarakins, and so we're going to actually have to win this scenario. It makes sense that we should be able to beat him 3 castles against 2, but if our troops are disorganized, if they are not well trained, aka black dragons, then there's going to be some problems. And we're going to find out that that's very much the case very soon. So I'm going to take one more pause as I kind of marshal my forces. This part is just going to be Phixfox taking it a little bit more serious, trying to get on the board and get my forces where they ought to be. I'm going to come back to you in just one moment after I eliminate some of the riffraff that's in the peripheral areas around this town. And we are making a beeline, by the way. We're making a beeline straight to their wizard castle. We're going to pick that up in just a couple of days. So we are back, and so the last time that I talked to you, it was month 2, week 4, day 1. It's now day 5. We have picked up some amount of the phoenixes. We've got some amount of dragons. This is not our primary wizard friend Sarakin. This is Marini. So the enemy is still marshaling these Titans. They're trying to get these forces all on board. Thankfully, we're able to pick off these troops on this supply line, on this inferior hero, and that is going to help us out a lot. My big hope in this fight is that we can prevent some losses to the phoenixes. If you have 4 phoenixes and you lose 2, that just feels like it's bad practice. And so ultimately we are going to do a better job than the AI says that we will, but we have to be conscious of these losses. This is not the final fight. If it's the final fight, win at all costs. But until that time, we should be smart, we should be careful, we should be cautious. And so for that reason, the phoenixes are going to peel off of the Titans. They are going to be the ones that ultimately end this fight on these 2 boars in just half a second. But until that juncture, they are going to go south, and so that way I lose only 2 phoenixes instead of 4. So a pretty good pickup there. Happy to see the advanced logistics. And again, we are making a beeline for our friends, the wizards. So in the early game, I mentioned that I headed west and I went straight for the Warlock castle. And why is that? It wasn't necessarily because it was a Warlock castle. I went west because going east towards these wizards, towards this castle here, is much more difficult. You have to go through beach and you've got to go through some really bad terrain. It's just a closer area to go from one to the other. Folks, we pick up Town Portal or excuse me, Town Gate, which is the 4th level spell. We pick up Chain Lightning, and we also pick up Dimension Door here, and I think that I've won this. It's day 7, there should be no problems, and it's Month of the Plague. It's Month of the Plague. And so, at this point, I have to tell you, I felt like having the Wizard's Castle in hand, I was going to win. I've got 4 castles against 1. I did not think that this fight would particularly be too much longer or too much more interesting. I felt like this fight was in the bag. This scenario was done. It was roasted. Stick a fork in it. It's over. And so, as you can see, I did start using the Dimension Door here. I needed to get out and get some other things taken care of. And so I do use Dimension Door for the rest of this scenario. The scenario does not last much longer. We do not end up getting Titans into this final army for these final conflicts. We are simply going to track down our foes here for this last 3.5 minutes or so. And so with that being said, we're going to watch the whole rest of this because Sarakin has, unfortunately for himself, missed out on one big resupply from Marini because we intercepted that and we did massive amounts of damage and we took out all those Titans. We also took out Aragon the Barbarian. So the AI did something nifty that they don't usually do on impossible difficulty. They separated their forces in a way that was just kind of weird. By the way, we're picking up the Golden Watch here because we do have the Hypnotize spell. You might as well. You might as well. But also, Sarakin tried to fight some enemies and it did not work pretty well for him. I think that Sarakin lost 1 or 2 different troops in this northern region that the Knights never ever really cleared out. So it was pretty interesting that the enemy shot themselves in the foot so hard. And there we are, folks. We finally got the Black Dragons. A good pickup, an important pickup. And even though our forces are not as strong as I would like them to be, I really planned on having 3 Titans in this army when I went to this final showdown. It's not going to be the case, and it's not really going to matter. When you can no-clip across the map, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's over. Gwyneth the Knight is back, although she is not on the side of the Yellow Knights. She is a green player. Good for her. I hope it works out really great for her. Pro tip, it did not. The enemy did not pick up this Mage Guild level 5. If they had, they would have also had access to Dimension Door. So my fears earlier were actually somewhat justified. Of course, you can't say that you were correct just because it worked out in your favor. A decision is not right or wrong whether or not it works out well this time. It's right or wrong if you made the right decision based off the information you had at hand. So I feel confident that it was still the right decision. Even on the off chance that it did end up being Dimension Door, it still would have been the right decision. And folks, Sarakin is hustling. He is marching. He is sprinting as quickly as he can over to his Wizard Castle. But unfortunately, he is not going to make it there. It's going to be month 3, week 1, day 5 when we end this scenario. And at this point, with his forces exhausted and with my overwhelming strength with my spells, Sarakin the Wizard is going to go down. It's going to be a glorious victory. And I couldn't even mess up this fight if I tried. Our final force here with Castor is big. So Sarakin does get up to the 7 defense. We've got the 2 attack, 1 defense, the 8 spell power, the 10 knowledge. We've got the Golden Goose, expert wisdom. We didn't even fill out our hero here. Level 13 on a medium-sized map. It was only level 13 there. Our biggest hero got to. There was not a lot of opportunities for +1s on the defense or the attack. There wasn't an awful lot of ways you could really improve your hero, and early on we did take a lot of the gold, which was not a mistake. Gold early on did help us have some increased flexibility, and we were able to use that to move forward with some other opportunities. And for the 3rd time we were offered Necromancy. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But that's gonna be it, folks. It's gonna be a rating of a Red Dragon, score of 224. This was a interesting map. This was a fun map. This was a map that on impossible difficulty, I would love it if you give it a shot on the FHeroes2 game. Give it a shot. Let me know how it goes for you, because I felt like this was challenging in a way that Phixfox doesn't usually deal with. And so I do believe that a couple of the strategy defining moments included things where we were going to, for example, try and stop our enemies earlier rather than later. We're looking at a blank screen here. I guess that means I should shut up. I'll catch you next time. My name is Phixfox, and I'm out.